right, welcome back to the Hang and Hunt podcast. Today we are going to be chatting about scouting, reading maps, kind of what we look for in a property. But before we get there, Billy, I think a lot of people enjoy the stories that we tell them. And it's no surprise that these stories are mostly alcohol related. Okay?
Except the hunting stories.
Except the hunting stories, obviously. Obviously. So if you like the stories that we share with you, please head on over to the Hunt Urban website, pick yourself up a t-shirt. These help pay for our bar tabs. If you like funny stories with drinking, buy a shirt, support the cause, and then we get more booze money, and then we can tell funnier stories.
Well, and then we can make more stories too.
Yeah. Help us make stories. Boom. Okay, so yeah. We don't have any sponsors, man. We gotta plug the shirts when we can.
Well, Hunt Urban, even though that's our own deal.
Yeah,
so.
well, Hunt Urban sponsor. Yeah. Hey, look, I took money from this hand and I put it in this hand.
That's not how you pay credit cards with one with another?
Yeah, I take my wife's money and I pay my credit card off. It's freaking awesome. We do have a problem, Billy. My wife has started listening to the podcast.
I know. Earlier she said, how long have you been planning to record this podcast today? And I went, just, not too long, but a little while. I just shut up real quick. And she said, yeah, because Taylor knew that we weren't going to have a babysitter today, so maybe he should have listened to your podcast 2 weeks ago.
She's listening.
She's listening.
I'm terrified.
My wife only likes the poop stories.
Yeah, because she got to hear. By the way, I'd like to give a shout out to the dude. I got a DM the other day that made me spit coffee out of my nose. It said, dude, ... tell your buddy that I fish in that lake. He fishes in the lake that you splatter back in the back of the boat.
So I had a guy the other day message me and was like, we should put Billy Was Here stickers on the back of all of those boats.
Was it the back of the boat or the side of the boat?
It was like the back corner.
I actually thought about it. If I was faced with that scenario, I'm jumping off the boat.
You need to have a rope to pull you back, though.
No,
There's gators in there.
Bro, there are no gators around my poop splatter, okay? If I'm hit with the Bee Gees on the boat where there's little Timmy and Tommy and everybody's having the most magical $8,000 week of their life, I'm going man overboard. I'll figure it out.
I thought I was going to fall because you're teetering. There's a rail there.
The last thing I'm doing is pulling my junk out. I mean, how many people were on the boat?
I don't remember, man.
It's all haze.
Well, I did have a few drinks in me that night, but no, it was later in the evening. I mean, the shuttles had already stopped running, so it was like one of the last boat rides. God, so it wasn't packed. It wasn't like 10 a.m. and everyone's riding over to Magic Kingdom for the opening. Thank God it was the diehards that were there all night long.
I bet people wish they had masks back then.
Poop particles go right around masks.
Yeah, they're effective. We're just going to turn this into a political commentary podcast and just let everybody have a piece of our mind.
How to not step on landmines.
Yeah, with your significant other. So, I guess what we can do is we're going to talk about scouting, reading maps, kind of what we're looking for, and then how to dissect properties. And this is all stuff that we covered in those some videos that we did for Onyx.
For Onyx, yeah.
And I think that if anybody hasn't seen those videos, it's worth checking out. And I think it's helpful to kind of see the spots that we're talking about. Now, this is in specifically those properties, the topo stuff that we're talking about. That's on bigger properties.
Yeah, that was on a lease in Ohio. And you were able to see, I mean, there were some big chunks of ag there. Well, not too much ag there, but big chunks of timber there. And there was a lot of topography.
Yep.
That we were able to pick on.
And one of the downsides to urban hunting, or one of the challenges, is we're really operating in a pretty small environment, right? Mm-hmm. So if we're talking about picking a spot based on topography, you might be able to do that in some ways when you're looking at, what property you get permission on.
Sure. But once you already have the property,
yeah,
and it's a few acres, you really have a few trees in there that you can actually hunt. What I look at then at that point is if there's a certain condition outside that would make me want to hunt on the northeast side or the south side of a certain knoll or something like that, then I'm going to pick the specific property. But if your property doesn't have that feature, you're probably not going to hunt it that day.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And so something that we've done that I think is really efficient or really effective is I'll take notes on each of my properties as to when it's the best time to hunt there. So if we have like early season with a northeast wind, or if there's a specific food source there or whatever, I can look at all the properties that we have to choose from and pick a specific spot based on that exact or those exact conditions. But something that maybe we start at a higher level and just say to the guy out there who doesn't have any properties, when you're looking at the aerial view of your area or like the chunk that you want to hunt in, what are we looking for?
So I tend to, in those instances, look for funnels and pinch points that I can see, because the first thing I look for when I get my boots on the ground is where's the bedding. But you can't always see that, from a Google or Onyx map. It's, you can see those aerials if there's tons of houses around, and then you see this one patch that is a, more of a clear-cut area or a floodplain or something that you can tell it's thick and has thick vegetation. Well, then most likely they're bedding there. But if it just looks like, a river of trees in between cul-de-sacs, and then look for the most ideal pinch points. And then you've mentioned it before, and it's been thrown around, that turkey's foot. That is not only a topographical feature where you have multiple ridges coming up to a hub. It can also be a vegetation feature. So you have all of these fingers of woods and little small riparian or streamways between homes. You find those hubs, and those are key points. So I look for those immediately.
Yeah, and something else I think is really important is there's no substitute for boots on the ground. You can look at the aerial stuff, you can identify these pinch points in areas, but when we're talking about urban environments especially, I mean, that landscape is constantly changing. Like, there could be construction going on next door. Obviously, the satellite imagery doesn't show that. Or there could be a big overgrown, acre lot that looks like amazing bedding. You get there, they're building a house on it. It's stripped clean, right? So it's important to get those boots on the ground. And also, one of the things I really like to do that I learned from you is when you identify the spot, I'll just go drive around there in a morning or an evening and just look for deer. Because sometimes you'll think you found this awesome spot that historically there should be a ton of bedding in or browse or whatever you're doing, and maybe that neighbor's got two 80-pound German shepherds that are off leash running around all the time
every day.
Yeah. Or maybe there's like a big deer fence there, or a couple of the neighbors have deer fences, and it creates an awesome funnel pinch point that you wouldn't know about otherwise. So I think it's really important to drive around and look for deer, and then also see kind of how they're using the area. And one property that we hunted together in particular comes to mind when we talk about bedding. This property was on a creek bed, and there was this little pocket of bamboo that was like 5 foot by 5 foot. It was just this invasive bamboo pocket.
And there were a few big mature trees that were growing out of it.
Yep. And there, every year, one of the bigger bucks in the area was bedding in that little spot.
Yeah, there were rubs all in there.
Yep. And you never would have known that was a awesome bedding area, because there was this little vegetative pocket that you couldn't have seen any other way. But
and that buck would come through from the front yard while it was still dark in the morning, would come through in the front yard on the, like, between a fence and the house. And that was close. I mean, that house, it had to have been, no more than 15 yards off of that fence.
Oh, yeah.
And it was such a narrow pinch, you would have never thought that deer would just walk through there. Well, he was going right to that little tiny patch of bamboo. And remember, we would have never known he was bedding there until we're like, Are there rubs on that bamboo in there? We looked in there, we're like, holy shit, there's a bed there.
Yeah, that was actually awesome. That deer's looking at us right
I know,
now.
I know.
But yeah, you were the one that was like, dude, you need to go hunt this property.
Yeah, because
now.
I set up and I was playing. Yeah, I was playing like a game on my phone. It's a rut, right? And I'm screwing around, playing dirt, and I see this buck. He came from that bamboo and cut through the hole in the fence. And I was going out of state to hunt for a couple of days, and I was leaving that day. And I called you. I'm like, dude, you need to go hunt. That deer's a big deer. And you were like, yeah, I think I'm going to go. This was on like a Friday. You're like, I think maybe I'll go there on Monday. I'm like, no, tomorrow morning, please go there. And I was on the stand out of state, and you texted me. You're like, I just smashed him.
Yeah, like 8:15. That was awesome. That deer, that deer died in the neighbor's yard. And so that deer came in. I grunted. He came in behind me across the creek. I grunted a couple times, and he was following some does, and he just walked out of sight. And I was like, damn it. And then about 15 minutes later, I see movement out of the corner of my eye, and here he is coming back to where I grunted. And I hammered him. I mean, pinwheel 12-ringed him. And he ran about 30 yards and looked back and then just reared up on his hind legs and flopped over dead backwards. And I was like, oh! And like, on one hand, I'm like, this is awesome. On another hand, I'm like, oh my God, because he's just dead in that guy's backyard.
I know, and it was wide open.
Wide open. And so I got down and I changed into my street clothes because I always keep street clothes in my car. And I went over to that neighbor's house who I didn't know at the time. And this is a very like small neighborhood, very tight.
Very small. I mean, 50 yards max between houses.
Yes. I mean, quarter-acre lots. And I rang the doorbell, and this guy comes out. I'll never forget this. He's like chewing his breakfast. And he's like, what's up? I was like, hey, sir, how you doing? I harvest. What did I say? I said, I'm helping your neighbors with the deer problem. I harvested one this morning, and he expired in your backyard. And the guy looked at me and was like, well, cool. Let's go grab him. And I'm like, thank God, right? And so we walk out in this guy's backyard, and it looked like I had the foam cannon at Senior Frogs in Cancun filled with blood.
Yeah.
And it was everywhere because I heart shot this deer. And the guy is walking through the blood in these little like moccasin slippers, does not care.
His house shoes, didn't care.
And he grabs this buck and rips his head up, and he goes, hey, somebody take my picture with this hog. Because I was hunting with Eric, and we're like, oh, yeah, cool, man. We took a couple pictures with the guy, and that guy's awesome. We hunt his property also now, but that could have gone poorly.
It could have. And, you know, that's a prime example of a property that we picked very specifically because of its pinch points.
Yes.
There's no bedding. There's really no food on the property except for like hostas and azaleas, you know, part of the year. But it's a beautiful, beautiful pinch point. All these houses are in these neighborhoods, and there's some big floodplains, and it backs up to a huge park. And where this area is, all the houses are kind of like, they're really pinched together. They're really close. They're close not only laterally, but then the creeks are small because that goes into a bigger creek, which goes into a river. So that creek's small, so the backyards are pretty close to each other too. And there's just this narrow strip of woods there, and then it gets a little fatter on one end and fatter on the other, and we're on the handle of a barbell, basically.
And that's exactly what we would look for, and we would recommend people look for when identifying the properties to check out. Because you know, not only those creek bed systems tend to be just highways for deer traveling in an urban area. There are a couple reasons for that. The main reason is the fact that the water's there, which allows vegetation to grow, and it prevents people from building there. So they can run those creek beds, you know, literally like a road. It's unobstructed.
No houses are in there.
Correct.
There's
in
no
the
fences.
Vegetation, there's some food to eat. And so that's one of the first things that we're looking for is that exact handle of a barbell. On either sides, they're bigger openings, and it doesn't have to be a square. It could be a continuation. But what it's going to do is it's going to funnel those deer down, and it's a great spot to intersect deer travel, to just see deer, find deer. And one of the things I love about that property in particular is the fact that there's no browse on the property. I don't have to worry about deer feeding in there when I go in there. I don't have to worry about bumping deer in the morning. I can just walk in. I mean, you can be in there just 10 minutes before sunrise and
Sure.
have no issue because the deer, once sun comes up, they'll travel. You have like a quick hour window, maybe 2 hour window of movement, and then you're done. That's one of my favorite properties to hunt for that exact reason, and that's something that we look for in these other properties. So I would say when you're scouting, like the what are you scouting for at a high level, quite literally is that aerial image and find those handles of a barbell, and also those crow's feet where maybe there are more than one of those pinch points where they all come together. You kind of have that like converging hub, and we talk about that in the video and show a real good example of it. But the whole key to hunting is maximizing your potential for sightings.
Absolutely.
Right? And so if you're where, like, I'd rather be at the intersection of 2 or 4 or 6 trails or whatever, rather than just one trail. And so that's kind of that converging hub. But and you'll start to kind of get a sense between looking at aerial photos and then getting boots on the ground at these places. It'll really help you figure out, like, okay, why are these deer here? What are they doing here? What's the feature that's pushing them here? And then you'll start to be able to say, oh, okay, well, at property A, it had these features. This property has those features. I'm guessing they'd be here or there or whatever. And then that's a great way to get in and kind of find it.
Absolutely. And when you get the boots on the ground, that's when you can find those other key features like a fence. So that property, not only does it have those pinch points, it has the creek, but it also has a fence that's broken.
Yep.
And the deer go through it, and it pinches them down even more. Now they can still they can go over it, they can go around it, but it's a path of least resistance, and we've killed many, many deer going in and out of that fence hole.
Yeah.
Many. So I've also we had another property. It was a big property that the landowner, I can't believe they let us do this, but they allowed us to we put up snow fence. We put up, remember when we put the paracord up with like reflectors on it?
Yeah.
So what we did is we put it up and we basically made a fence in this big block because we didn't have any funnels in there. It was just wide open so the deer could bed and feed really anywhere in this big block of timber. So we went and made an X, and it was a big long, I mean, like each end of it was over 100 yards long, and then a big 20, 30-yard opening in the center of it. So the deer would come and they'd hit that fence, the quote-unquote fence that we made, and parallel it and come right to the convergence, and we made our own hub.
Yep.
So even making those hubs can be crucial when you have, like you said, boots on the ground. Let's say you look at that big aerial view and you're like, wow, this is a perfect pinch point. It's a perfect area I can hunt. And you get there, and all the trees are mature. They have no limbs on them for the first 50 feet, and it's wide open, and you can see for 300 yards. That is not ideal in my mind when it comes to deer hunting.
Yeah.
I do not like that at all, and there's no understory and ground vegetation. So what do you do in those situations? Sometimes I pass on them.
Yeah.
Unless I can put a camera there and find out if there's great deer, if there's a lot of sign there, maybe, but a lot of times I'm passing and looking for vegetation with my boots on the ground.
Well, and also that scenario you're setting up, you're not only more visible to the deer to where you're like bumping them, but you're more visible to the neighbors.
Oh, yeah.
And, they're having discretion is the key, and knowing when a property might not be the best place to be hunting is really ideal. And also, if you're going in there to where it's super visible and those deer can see you, they're like, oh, well, there's that two-legger again. Like, we're not going over there today. And then also, if you're on a property where you're able to kind of help stack the odds in your favor, like we were talking about with that paracord or then the snow fencing that we did, that was great because it literally put all the deer on the X, quite literally. And I mean, we killed a pile of deer there.
Yeah.
But there's some spots where if it's 100-yard wide floodplain and you're not able to do that because for whatever reasons, like you're going to be spinning your wheels a good bit there.
Yeah, I mean, how many times, we've talked about it, how many times do you see a buck here, you see deer here, you go and hunt the best side, and then they're over on the other side where you were hunting 2 days ago, and you just follow them back and forth. Everyone's done that, and I've heard people throw around the word lucky. Oh, well, I just got lucky that day. Yeah, you did. I'd rather stack the odds so far in my favor that the deer don't really have a choice. If they want to get from A to B, they have to go through this area. So the size of a a funnel point or a pinch point is really up for interpretation, right? Because some of those pinch points that we hunt are 15 or 20 yards across, and others are more like 75 or 80 yards across and deep. And when I have one of those deep ones, if you're right on the edge of it, I'm not shooting 75 or 80 yards all the way to the other side. So then I have to hunt more in the center of it.
Right.
And then vice versa, when you're in one of those real small, narrow ones, you can pretty much be wherever you want to be as long as you can shoot into it. Right.
Yeah. And that's also important, is like figure out the furthest away those deer might be and set up to where you have the highest percentage or probability of a shot. There's nothing worse than being just out of range. 50 yards,
Yep.
60, and you're like, right? Where if you had just gone 20 yards further, you're smoke city, and you're coming out heavy.
And another,
I always come out heavy.
I go in heavy too. There's another property that we hunt, and they have dogs there, and dogs usually equate to no deer are going to be right there where the dogs are. But the deer are smart enough that they know exactly where the electric fence is. They know exactly where those fences or where the limits of those dogs' boundaries are. And they'll bed right on the other side within 20, 30 yards of those dogs because they know.
Yeah.
So dogs can be a great pinch point because the deer aren't going to walk through, a pack of dogs,
right?
Especially big dogs, but they'll go right around them. And setting up in an area where there's dogs downwind of you, or there's a property that has dogs downwind of you, it's great because the deer aren't going to go downwind of you. It's just like having a big bluff or a lake, behind you and downwind. The deer have to be upwind of you. That's another way that you can use pinch points in these urban settings.
Yeah, and just like there's that corner of the electric fence, I mean, just fences in general are awesome.
I love hunting fences.
I'll hunt right 20 yards off a fence corner. I mean, these deer know their environment so well in an urban setting, and things that you might think are a deterrent, where like I think the general person is going to go, oh, there's a fence there. I want to get as far away from that fence because I don't want to feel like I'm hunting, in the corner of that person's yard or whatever. But in reality, the deer are lazy, and the deer know their environment insanely well. And they know where that fence is. And how many times have we seen a deer walk to a fence, turn, and just parallel the thing, and then cross the corner, and then kind of peel off, right? I mean, I think they almost like the safety of walking a fence or something.
We've used that to our advantage, too, when it comes to fences. So there's another property that we hunt where we actually, the deer that we're hunting aren't on the property that we are in the tree that we're in. So the tree that we're in is in a backyard that you would never hunt. I mean, not in a million years would you hunt. There's a pool there. There's a patio there. I don't think it's a 6 foot. It's probably a 4 or 5 foot fence. But there's a picket fence all the way around it, and the deer never go inside of it. But the tree that we climb is inside of it because as soon we get in, the deer don't care about anyone who's in that backyard because they never come out and harass them. But they always pinch along the edge of that fence. Yep. So we go into the backyard, climb one of those tulip poplars that's right there, and then as soon as we get up over the fence where we can shoot, we set up. And you have great back cover, and you shoot right over the fence into the property that we're actually hunting, and the deer never know we're there. That is one of the best kill trees that we have because, I mean, we've been hunting there for 6 or 7 years. Yeah, 6 or 7 years now, and we haven't been busted there. The deer never look over it. It is a security thing. They're like, the backyard. Yeah. The arrows are not coming from there. They're going to come from somewhere else in these woods.
Important to note, we have permission at all the properties.
We do.
It's not like we're just like shooting over the fence.
Oh, yeah, it's in a zoo.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when is your favorite time of year to scout? Boots on the ground, when is your favorite time of year?
Now. Well, I mean, we're in the late season. We're going into spring. And, we can look for sheds and things like that. My main focus, though, is to look for the types of vegetation. Like, let's say I already have the property. I know where the pinch points are. I know where the creek, where the features, the topography is. I'm going in now to look for the vegetation. I like to look for the types of vegetation, what they're going to be eating, into that late season because I will look and I will set up trail cameras and things like that. Early season comes around. I love hunting early season for deer. But then as the leaves start to go away, as the vegetation starts to drop off of the trees and all of the shrubs and the understory, the visibility increases. That's also the time of peak rut, when you start losing all of those leaves. So where are the deer going to be feeding? Once most of the acorns are gone, they're going to be hitting browse, they're going to be hitting that leftover mass. So I'm looking for the vegetation that's thick. It's going to have the food source from late October into, January, February.
Yep.
So that's what I like to look for, and now is when I look for it.
Yeah, I agree. I also really like being able to identify the trails this time of year, because I don't want to... I feel like in the springtime, summertime, the deer are on a different pattern, and I don't want to get fooled by an earlier season pattern where what we're actually looking for is this time of year pattern, or the November, October through December, January kind of pattern, where you can identify the thickets, you can find where they're likely to be bedding once all the vegetation's gone, you can find the travel routes that they like, or maybe figure out kind of where some other disturbances might be, where the rubs are. You can kind of find those core areas and then figure out your access as well. Because, we're both really big on accessing an area appropriately. And I think a lot of people don't put enough attention into how to access a property using topography to your advantage, walking between the houses to stay hidden. Little things like that really are the difference in a a successful hunt or an unsuccessful hunt, because you bump deer that you don't even realize.
Sure, and going in, like we've talked about, going in while the landscapers are there, or while they're blowing leaves, not after. You don't sit in your truck and wait, and then when they leave, then go in and sneak.
Right.
Because that's when the deer see the landscapers leave, and then see you walking in, they go, oh, no thanks.
Yeah, and we've even gone as far as to be like, when we're team hunting a property and one of us wants to go deep inside, you'll stay in your regular clothes or I'll stay in my regular clothes. We'll both walk in together. I'll climb the tree. You'll walk out, and then you'll put your gear on and go hunt. And those deer, they can't.
They don't count. Yeah.
And so it's like dude in, dude out. We're good. I mean, it's scary how many times we've done that. And you've shot a deer before I even had my camo on. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm just dragging today, whatever. But
thank God I got the big guy.
Yeah, exactly. So it's important to kind of think through those access points. And this time of year before spring green up is really the best time, in my opinion, and I think your opinion, to kind of go through and scout those areas out. And so I guess we know kind of what we're looking for at a high level between the bedding and looking for those big, thick vegetative spots, but also looking at the trails, the rubs, all the markings, and then you also can look for sheds, and that's a true indicator that something, a deer that you might be interested in was there.
Sure. And Taylor, you talked about the thick vegetation, and I brought that up too. Do you know the one property I'm talking about? And it's a floodplain. It's really, really thick, but most of what's in there is that invasive barberry. It's got the little red berries on it, and it's a really fine thorn and when it gets in you, it's like a splinter.
Yes.
That stuff is not great for deer. In my opinion, from what I've seen, I haven't seen very many deer eating it. Maybe it's the thorns on it. I don't know if it's the taste. I have no idea. But that one property, it's thick, and you would think, oh, these deer are going to be browsing in here. It's going to be crazy. But they don't. They browse on a lot of the stumps of, there's a lot of, maple trees in there. You'll see the sprouts coming off of that, and they're just mowed down, right? So knowing the vegetation, the types of browse that the deer are hunting in your area is critical. Because just because you find a thick area, if it's all sweet gum that's 6 or 8 feet tall, sure, it's going to give you a little cover. But does it give you cover, and does it give you food? And does it give you thermal cover in the wintertime? So you want to put all those things together. What's the best? And I like to see a variety more than anything else, because deer, people always say, oh, you have to hunt the white oaks. The white oak acorn is just a small percentage of the deer's biomass that it actually eats throughout the year. It's a very small percentage.
It's like a 2-week window.
Yeah. Because the white oak acorns germinate in the fall. So if you see white oak acorns on the ground in December, they're either, and they didn't germinate, they're rotten. They're gone. Maybe they had that little maggot that gets in them, but the deer aren't going to eat them. They'll eat red oaks throughout the winter, any type of red oak, because they germinate in the spring. But if you don't have those, it's a very small window, and it's a very small percentage of their yearly intake. So browse is a huge one. You have to know what they're browsing on and what they like the most. Just because you pick a thick area doesn't mean it's a great area for food and bedding.
Yeah, no, you need to have, all those factors come into play, and also wind. What if you have this awesome thick area, but it's only good on a south wind in order for the deer to be able to bed there comfortably, or the does are always bedding close to food, generally like very tight to food most of the year. So if you find an area that's got that food, but you can't get in there without bumping them, don't waste your time.
Yeah. Hunt somewhere else.
Yeah, and it's all about finding the right spot with all the right factors, or some of the right factors. And, obviously I'm not saying you have to just sit on your hands until everything is perfect.
Sure.
But, if you're going to go in and bump deer every time, don't hunt there, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's some places that, especially on larger properties, where where you park, you're going to bump a few deer, but you're not hunting those deer. You're hunting the deer that are hundreds of yards away,
right?
A quarter of a mile, a half a mile away. Okay, I understand that. But if you're in a backyard, a lot of times if you bump a deer and they know you're climbing a tree, they're not coming back that night.
Yeah.
So I definitely would pass on those instances. We have some of these properties that are loaded with white oaks. Okay, that's not the property we hunt. We try to go find the property that's in between there and where they're going to be bedding.
Yep.
So that's the property we try to focus on. We try to focus on the pinch point between the bedding and all those white oaks. How hard is it in October when the white oaks are dropping really, really hard? Like they started a little bit in September and they're really hammering down in October. How hard is it to get in under those trees in these suburban settings? The deer are usually, a lot of times, already under there midday.
They're laying there on their back, just like, whoa, like love and life. You can't get in there and hunt them, though.
Yeah.
And you need to, you need to figure out those access points and figure out how you can get between the bedding and the food, or the food and the bedding, depending on when you're hunting, with the right wind without bumping them, right? And that's kind of the fun of bow hunting in general, is like moving those chess pieces on the board and slipping in to a point where you actually can do it, effectively, instead of just walking through the woods and seeing a bunch of white tails and you're like, damn it.
But we've also used that to our advantage. So one of the other features that we've seen and we've used multiple times is we'll find a place that has a public trail very close to where we hunt. And that's bad because there's some, people can see you there. But if you can hunt strategically, you can be out of the view. But the good part about it is when you team hunt, you can send someone on the public trail and they can walk down the public trail upwind of your spot, 400 or 500 yards up, and just kind of mosey on through. And the deer are used to people walking on those public trails, but they also don't want to be next to them. So they're going to bump over 50 or 60 yards right into the kill zone of where we're actually hunting.
Absolutely.
Tips and tricks.
Well.
Maybe I shouldn't have given that one away.
Yeah, we're going to rewind.
Edit that one out.
Well, it's funny. I mean, you mentioned that. There was one property. I have my Russian mafia tracksuit that I bought from like TJ Maxx or whatever for like $8. It's the matching colored one. But the reason I bought it was
it's got
hunting.
4 stripes instead of 3.
Yeah. And it comes with vodka in the pocket. Vodka. The machine. Oh God! If you guys haven't watched that Burt Kreischer machine, delete our podcast and go watch that because you will laugh your face off.
It's very funny.
But I was hunting this park and I kept bumping deer, and it's public park, and I bought this tracksuit, and what I did was I put it on top of all my camo because all the people that are in that park are like jogging or doing weird stuff like physical fitness related. Losers. And so I'd walk in the tracksuit on the trails, and I would walk right past deer. And then I would just get to the block, and I'd take it off real quick and walk in the woods with my camo, and it was perfect. And it was also very helpful when walking in and out of the woods for the people that were exercising. I didn't look like the weirdo in camo. And they were just like, oh, hey, how's it going? You're wearing a 4X, mobster outfit. Look like Tony Soprano.
Yeah, it's purple. You look like Barney.
Look, I found a bow. But yeah, I mean, that was super helpful. So, well, do you have anything else you want to add on scouting and reading maps?
No. I mean, those suburban settings. Oh, Wyatt's back to say hi.
Wyatt, it's really just
buddy.
an attention. OR. What's up, dude? Get
No,
down.
I think doing that the overview and then the boots on the ground is critical. You absolutely have to have boots on the ground to see, if one, to confirm what you saw in that aerial, and then two, you need to be able to see if there's the proper vegetation. Are there any extra pinch points? Driving around afterward, or in the evenings, in the mornings, to see, are there actually deer there? I mean, there's
Well, and I think the biggest thing is, or I'll look for not just deer, but signs of the humans not wanting deer, like deer fencing. If I drive through an area and I see a couple properties that have big deer fences, I'm like, yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Or if you see those evergreen trees that look like lollipops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's prime. You go to that property and say, hey, I see that you've got tons of deer damage here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here's how I can help you.
Yep.
For today only, free of charge. And the other thing to constantly ask yourself is ask the question, why? When you're seeing the deer, why are they here? When you're seeing sign or finding sheds, why is this here? What is causing that to happen? And kind of, if you're a note taker, take notes. If you're just able to mentally take a mental note, take a mental note, but start learning from these experiences to build on it so that you're not just staying in the same spot over and over again.
Yeah, I hate to waste my time doing anything.
Except sitting here recording.
This is not a waste. So at least I get to chuckle. That's my physical activity for the day, is laughing.
Oh, glad
you and I get to chuckle, and I'm like, ho, ho, ho.
Well, hopefully people will buy some T-shirts and we'll get a beer each.
12-ounce curls.
Yeah, or little 1.5-ounce curls. Little J-Mo.
You can take those. I'll take the 12 ounces. You are talking about liquor though, right? Because I'll drink 12 ounces. No, not gonna do that beer.
I was thinking of like a nice little Truly.
Oh gosh, White Claw.
Can't break the law when you're drinking the Claw.
Have you seen the Nelly beer commercial on YouTube?
You mean like Left Eye Band-Aid Nelly?
No. It was to me it looks like Brad Pitt, and it's a spoof on, hi, I'm Edgar Nelly, grandson of Chester Nelly. Yeah, go look that up. Nelly beer commercial. It is high quality. It probably wouldn't go over in today's society very well, but it's a classic.
So listener homework is The Machine.
The Machine and the Nelly beer commercial. Those are two absolutely critical YouTube videos that you must watch. Must.
Check them out. Leave us a comment below. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast. If you're listening on like Apple iTunes or anything, leave us a comment. Leave us a review. Unless it's less than 5 stars, then don't leave a review. No. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, and let us know any topics or stories you want to cover. We're putting together like our favorite 5 or more. I mean, we can't count, so it might be way more than 5. But our like funniest encounters in the burbs. So if there's a story that we've shared with you, let us know what you want to hear, because we probably have way more than 5 apiece.
Yeah, we're gonna try to. I'm not going to put myself in jail because of this, but
not again.
Not again. Right now, I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, we'll give it to you raw and unfiltered. Raw.
You sound like ODB. All right, thanks for listening, guys. See you soon.
Thanks, guys.